Premier League title race will go down to the final day of the season. Mark my words. Arsenal and Man City are so neck and neck. It's unbelievable. There's nothing between the two sides. And I think we're looking at one of the best sides to ever not win the Premier League and come second. I'm thinking of Kevin Keegan's Newcastle. I'm thinking of Jurgen Klopp's 97-point Liverpool side. And this Arsenal side, if they don't win it, they will be absolutely crestfallen. I've done videos on this channel saying about the optimism for Arsenal moving forward. They've still got a fantastically young squad. And Arsenal still have the opportunity to do it, but I think it's going to come right at the end. We're going to break down where Arsenal go from this weekend. Obviously, a massive win over Bournemouth, absolutely dominated them. And of course, Man City. We have to start off with Man City. The goals that Erling Haaland is scoring in the last few weeks, the amount of goals that City put past Aston Villa, Luton, Wolves, it is scary. And this City machine, I mean, I don't know how you could compete against it if you're Mikel Arteta. It's a massive testament to who he is as a manager and what he thinks he can do as a manager, the optimism that he's bringing to Arsenal, that Arsenal can even compete with this because they are on an unbelievable run since the turn of the year. There's only a draw in there against Man City, a loss to Aston Villa, obviously a couple of different results in the Champions League, but in the Premier League, how Arsenal competing with this juggernaut is absolutely scary because I'm seeing it as a City fan. Man City defensively have still got flaws, and I think if you're an Arsenal fan watching this video, that is where the optimism has to come from. It's not coming from Erling Haaland missing and going missing in the Real Madrid games, for example. It's not coming from no Riyad Mahrez, no Ilkay Gundogan that can score these kind of clutch goals. I don't think that's an issue in this title race debate. I really don't. I think Haaland will find the goals needed. The big debate will be about Man City's ability to keep clean sheets. Obviously against Wolves, obviously against Luton. There haven't been masses of clean sheets, and Arsenal have got the best defensive record in the league. David Raya has already got the Golden Glove award. So the big thing will be City's concentration levels, particularly in that Spurs game, because against Wolves it was clear sailing, and then you concede a cheap goal out of nowhere. And City have been doing it all season, and on some level, it's why Real Madrid were able to get just enough in the game when they were getting absolutely dominated to take it to penalties, and why City aren't potentially on for winning the treble, which is ridiculous to even say that you'd even expect it. But with the standard of this side, I do think the defensive issues there for City, which are very minimal, but this is not the same defence that Arsenal have got. It's not the same amount of clean sheets that David Raya, Ben White, Gabriel Saliba are all keeping. And that will be the issue for Man City if Man City don't go on to win the FA Cup and or the Premier League title. The defence has to be good, and it has to be much better. If you're a Man City fan, you have to let me know in the comments down below. But moving forward, Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, all linking up with Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland, I think, has been completely and unfairly criticised. I think Roy Keane obviously has some personal issues with his dad, and he's been this massive kind of proponent of kind of saying that Erling Haaland hasn't been living up to it. But we're looking at a guy in back-to-back seasons who will be top scorer in the league, who's broken the record in the Premier League history, in Premier League era, of the amount of goals in a single season. And he's kicking on to a different gear. The goals that he scored against Wolves, his frustration for being taken off, it was Ronaldo-esque. And that will be a big moment, I think, for City in terms of how many goals can Erling Haaland score from now until the end of the season. West Ham at home, that could easily be a hat-trick. Fulham away, that could definitely be a couple of goals. Erling Haaland could legitimately score 5 or 6 goals from now until the end of the season, which is a scary amount of goals. So that is the massive cause for optimism. I think Erling Haaland, at a weird point in the season, even though it's really optimistic in terms of the FA Cup as well, I want to see Erling Haaland have a big FA Cup final against Man United. He didn't quite have it against Man United in the same fixture, obviously, last year. That is the massive cause for optimism for Man City. Erling Haaland's form, he looks a little bit leaner, he looks a little bit quicker. I wonder if he's been carrying an injury or a little bit of a lack of fitness in previous months. Right now, he looks right back to his devastating best, and he could have scored a double hat-trick against Wolves. There's no question about it. We have to talk about Arsenal. They've got, obviously, the likes, I've talked about Spurs and Fulham for City before the West Ham game. Arsenal have got Man United. And we have to be real. I know Arsenal's record at Old Trafford isn't the best in the world. There are obviously legitimate historical reasons for being nervous if you're an Arsenal fan. I think that's fair to say. But apart from that, on a sporting level, if Arsenal can't go to Man United and get 3 points easily, with the way that Arsenal are defending, with the way that Arsenal are controlling football matches, with the way Odegaard is dominating midfield and creating so many chances week in, week out, he's in the form of his life. And maybe we don't talk about it enough. Maybe I certainly don't on this channel. And of course, with the goals that are coming from the likes of Kai Havertz, coming from the likes of Trossard, who is sneaking under the radar with the amount of goals that he scored this season. And again, you'll look at, if you're an Arsenal fan, where they can go next season, those kind of players, and if they can get even better, which I really do think they can. And this is a Man United side that are a little bit, well, they're dejected. They're devoid of confidence. They nearly got smashed by Coventry in the FA Cup semi-final and avoided catastrophe. But even in the Premier League, they're getting rinsed at points by Sheffield United. They couldn't beat Burnley at home. So if you're an Arsenal fan, you have to be sat there thinking there's so much cause for optimism for perfect results against Man United and Everton. Now, obviously, Everton's a difficult one. They've obviously picked up points against Arsenal under Sean Dyche. But again, if you can't beat Man United and Everton, then it's not really worth making a video in the first place. But I do think at that point, it will go down to the final day of the season. If Arsenal can put pressure on City, score early, then that's where I think it matters. The big thing for me about Arsenal, I don't think enough people are talking about, is Thomas Partey. Whether he's got a long-term future at the club, we could probably doubt with Jorginho being offered a new contract. Declan Rice obviously coming in as well. I think it'd be a massive mistake for Arsenal to get rid of Thomas Partey. The physicality that he has shown in that midfield, the quality that he has on the ball, I think he needs to be starting at the start of next season and going into next season in terms of the business end of the season. This time next year is what I'm saying. I think Thomas Partey still has to be a cornerstone of that midfield. Unless you can go out and get someone better than Thomas Partey to play alongside Declan Rice, I don't think that's going to happen easily or cheaply for Mikel Arteta. But he's been a revelation, Mikel Arteta, bringing in Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey's been the revelation in terms of what he's brought into that midfield. And I've always said on this channel that I think Arteta will look back and realise that maybe certain games where Arsenal didn't have enough steel in midfield, could they have brought back Thomas Partey earlier in certain games? That is a big question mark, because I think he's been absolutely exemplary since he's come back and then returned into full fitness. It's getting very, very tight. Spurs, if you're an Arsenal fan, you're looking at Spurs versus Man City, you think, if they put up some sort of performance against Liverpool, which I know they scored a couple of goals, but someone like Kulusevski did nothing in the game. Someone like Son really did nothing in the game. Obviously, I know he picked up the goal, but really didn't contribute. You're even more nervous as an Arsenal fan, because that kind of debate that Spurs can offer is kind of professional resolve and kind of put out a performance because they're professional footballers, despite the fact they play for Spurs. I think you're devastated if you're an Arsenal fan, because Spurs were so poor and they're in such bad form. In the last 4 games, the amount of goals they've shipped, it is embarrassing. So Spurs on paper is obviously the hardest game for City. City have never won in the Premier League era in the new stadium for Spurs. The first win only came a few months ago in the FA Cup. That is the big hurdle. But the way it's going, it might actually just be a random West Ham performance out of nowhere, or Fulham. But Spurs, for me, I think if you're an Arsenal fan, you would be frustrated. All in all, I think it is leading towards a final day of the season crunch match. And we all know what happened when Coutinho scored for Aston Villa with Steven Gerrard, how tight that was. And it took miracles. It took players that no longer play for Man City to kind of do the business. Someone like Ilkay Gundogan, who was absolutely exceptional in that game. So that's where I'm going to leave the video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Will it go to the final day of the season? Or is there a world where Man City drop points before for Arsenal to maintain their position at the top of the table? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll see you very, very soon.